The pharaohs are furious again. One drone video from Gondar, one dam Egypt didn't see coming, and Cairo's internet is melting down. Memes, outrage, and Nile paranoia all over again. This isn't GERD Part 2, it's something smaller, quieter, and somehow more threatening. Because this time, Ethiopia didn't even ask. Way good fun! Welcome to Semonigna Spotlight, your front row seat to the Horn's most explosive stories. Tonight, we dive into the uproar shaking Cairo's digital walls, where Egyptians are calling Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed the Pharaoh of the Nile. What triggered this new Nile drama? A visit, a video, and a dam that Egypt never saw coming. The Pharaoh of the Nile. How one visit broke Egypt's internet. For the second time in a decade, Ethiopia has made Egypt lose its collective calm. Not with fighter jets or diplomacy, but with a construction update. This week, Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed toured the Megek irrigation development project near Gondar in the Amhara region, sharing photos and drone footage of the massive site. The videos showed giant earth movers carving canals, pumping stations nearing completion, and a river, the Megek, already diverted through new tunnels. Within hours, Egyptian social media erupted. Influencers, media pages, and talk shows began circulating memes dubbing Abiy Pharaoh of the Nile. For Cairo's online warriors, this was GERD déjà vu. The same fury that once met the grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam has now resurfaced. But this time, over a smaller, quieter irrigation project that Egyptians didn't even know existed until the footage went viral. The Megek Miracle, a dam for Ethiopia. Unlike GERD's colossal 74 billion cubic meter reservoir, the Megek project is modest, but deeply strategic. Located in North Gondar's Denbiya district, the project aims to transform the lives of tens of thousands of farmers who for decades relied on erratic rainfall. Here's what makes it a national milestone. A river diversion successfully completed. The Megek now flows through engineered tunnels, marking a key step toward full impoundment. A dam and pumping system capable of storing about 1.8 billion cubic meters of water, enough to irrigate 17,000 hectares of farmland and supply Gondar city with a century of secure drinking water. An 870-hectare reservoir footprint, integrated with canals, drainage networks, and a pumping station that will lift water to highland farmlands. Cost: estimated over 5.9 billion birr after years of redesigns and technical upgrades. For Amhara's farmers, Megek is more than infrastructure. It's freedom from the sky. Year-round irrigation means food security, export crops, and local agro-industries that could turn Gondar into Ethiopia's new breadbasket. The Megek joins a family of ambitious Amhara region-based projects, Rib, Gumara, Koga, that together will push the region toward agricultural transformation. As the Megek reservoir fills, water will power pumps, feed canals, and lift an entire region out of subsistence. For Ethiopians, this is called development. For Egypt, it's called provocation. Why Egypt panicked, the shadow of the Nile. Egyptian media outlets quickly framed the Megek project as a new threat to the Nile flow. Satellite images of the reservoir under construction filled Cairo's talk shows, and the usual Nile rhetoric returned. Existential threat, water theft, hydrological warfare. But does Megek really threaten the Nile? The numbers say otherwise. Studies show that the Megek River contributes roughly 0.23 billion cubic meters of water annually to Lake Tana, which feeds the Blue Nile. In comparison, Lake Tana's annual outflow into the Nile is about 3.7 billion cubic meters. That means Megek contributes only around 6% of the lake's total outflow. A drop in the Nile, not a dam that can tilt its balance. Even if Ethiopia harnessed every cubic meter of Megek water, it wouldn't meaningfully affect the Nile reaching Sudan or Egypt. The evaporation and local use pale compared to Egypt's own losses in outdated canals and inefficient agriculture. Yet, Egypt's anxiety isn't about numbers. It's about control. For a century, Cairo ruled the Nile narrative through colonial-era treaties that excluded Ethiopia, the very country that generates 86% of the river's flow. Every new Ethiopian dam, whether hydropower or irrigation, chips away at that old monopoly. A new normal, Ethiopia's right to build. Ethiopia's approach is now unapologetically sovereign. The GERD broke the psychological barrier, the old taboo that said the Nile must never be touched upstream. Once that dam stood, everything else became possible. The MEJEC project is part of a broader strategy to use Ethiopia's water for Ethiopia's people. Hydropower in the west, irrigation in the north, food and security across the highlands. It represents a transition from foreign-funded dependence to locally driven resilience. And legally, Ethiopia stands on firm ground. International water law supports equitable and reasonable utilization of shared rivers, not monopoly ownership. The Nile is not Egypt's inheritance, it is Africa's bloodstream. From Lake Tana to the Blue Nile, from the Awash Basin to the Omo Valley. Ethiopia's engineers are laying the foundation for food security, not warfare. The meme war, Pharaoh versus farmer. Back on Egyptian social media, the storm only grew louder. Abiy Ahmed's MEJEC visit turned into meme gold. Abiy as Pharaoh holding a dam like a scepter. Abiy sitting atop Lake Tana labeled The New Source, a photoshopped map showing the Nile reversing its flow toward Ethiopia. Hashtags like #Pharaoh of the Nile and #Nile hijack trended for 2 days straight. Egyptian influencers mocked Ethiopia's dams as cup-sized projects, while others called them death by evaporation. But beneath the memes, many Egyptians quietly acknowledged a truth their politicians avoid. Ethiopia is not stealing the Nile, it is mastering it. Cairo's obsession with control, its refusal to modernize irrigation or cooperate on joint projects, has turned a shared river into a weapon of fear. Meanwhile, Ethiopia, one of the poorest nations on earth just a decade ago, is turning that same river into a ladder to prosperity. For Ethiopia, it's a statement that development no longer waits for permission. The MEJEC Dam is a promise to Gondar's farmers, a power supply for a city, and a model for the next generation of regional projects. Its opportunity. The project will create jobs, modernize irrigation, and stabilize food prices in one of Ethiopia's most productive but climate-stressed regions. For Egypt, it's another mirror reflecting the past, a reminder that its colonial-era hydropolitics are collapsing. Instead of seeing Ethiopia as a rival, Cairo could see a partner. Imagine cooperation on irrigation efficiency, basin-wide flood control, and power sharing. Not threats, but shared gain. But for now, Egyptian television still screams betrayal. Egyptian Twitter still burns with memes, and the Nile remains a battlefield of pride. A river of the future, not of fear. The Nile once bound civilizations together. Now it tests whether they can share survival. Ethiopia no longer fears the river's curse. After the GERD, after MEJEC, after Rib and Gumara, it has rewritten its destiny with concrete, turbines, and canals. The Nile is no longer a taboo. It is Ethiopia's right, Ethiopia's tool, and Ethiopia's hope. The Pharaoh of the Nile doesn't live in Cairo anymore. He lives in Gondar, among farmers who finally have water, in fields that bloom when the sky forgets to rain. And perhaps one day, When Egypt lets go of its colonial ghosts, both nations might find that there's enough river for everyone if they stop fighting over who owns the flow and start working on how to share it. This has been Semonigna Spotlight, where the horn speaks loud, the world listens, and tonight, the Nile flows through a new chapter of African power.